Welcome into episode 491 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Crew and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins fall to the Anaheim Ducks 7-5 at TD Garden. They're now 3-6 on the year. And Bridget and Scott, it really is same story, different day for the Bruins. I mean, they worked hard, and that's a theme with this team. They do work hard, and so you feel bad for their results because it's not like they're a team that's just packing in and not trying. They're trying hard, but they can't maintain leads. They keep finding themselves in multi-goal deficits. They keep fighting back, but they keep falling short. It really is. You can go back the last 5-6 games, and it's been the case in 4 of them.
Yeah, it's brutal, and I think you can sense guys just getting like increasingly frustrated, dejected, just upset that this keeps happening. Um, because you're right that there is fight, and they've scored more than we thought they were going to, but they're just making too many mistakes, and the team defense is just not nearly good enough. I have some stats like we can probably get into at some point, but they're giving up too many chances, too many high danger chances. And I thought goaltending was not great last night from Jonas Corposalo. I thought there were at least 2 that he probably should have had. And the let ups after goals, like the emotional swing these last 2 games from when they tie it with this great third period comeback and a big goal from Morgan Geekie to then just immediately giving one up and like the devastation of giving it right back and suddenly like a game you thought was at least going to get to overtime just turning into 0 points once again. Six straight losses all in regulation. They haven't gotten a single point out of this. And I mentioned on the last podcast, they only had one stretch like this all of last year. They only had one regulation losing streak longer than 5 games. And that came in March after the deadline sell-off. They had a 7-game regulation losing streak. So yeah, they're in a tough spot. And I don't know if we just want to jump right into opening shifts because mine ties into all this, and it's about some of the post-game comments. You can just sense it from talking to these players that like this has quickly gone from like, yeah, there's some silver linings we can cling to, maybe even like moral victory type stuff. Hey, we keep fighting back. It's been a tough schedule, some good opponents. To then, I thought after the Florida game, you heard frustration coming out. It was almost like they were stunned, like they couldn't believe it ended on that bad bounce off Andrew Peake's skate. And then you heard multiple players after Thursday's game say they're embarrassed and like really sound pretty down on where this team is. Morgan Geekie said, it's just embarrassing. I mean, to the fans, to everybody, it's just like poor. Everything's poor. Nikita Zadorov, it's embarrassing. It's not how we want to play, how we should play, giving up so many goals every night. Jonas Corposalo, I'm embarrassed. We should all be. And Morgan Geekie I thought was really good post game and just bluntly honest, having gone through this last year, knowing that this team did not recover from a bad start. He was asked to take he was asked about like taking a glass half full approach. There's still so much of the season left, right? There's still 73 games to go. He said, it's tough to be glass half full, to be honest with you. I think everybody's sick of it in here. The new guys, the guys that were here last year that went through everything and saw everybody get shipped out at the deadline. He said, you can't ruin your season at the start, but it can get out of hand pretty quick. And I think that's what's going to happen if we don't turn things around. Added, the reality that we saw last year is what happens when you don't perform. And that's the way things seem to be going. Like, what's the saying? Like, it can get late early. This can really snowball if they don't get it fixed ASAP. And as we keep talking about, we do these podcasts 3 times a week. Like, schedule's not letting up. Saturday afternoon, Colorado Avalanche, one of the best teams in the league, coming to town. Team that beat you 4-1 1 week ago. And then another back-to-back, your third of the month, coming up on Monday and Tuesday. Like, there's not a lot of time to sit back, take a deep breath, and get this right. Like, it's got to be on the fly. At some point, they just need to be a lot better. They just need to stop making these mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, the post game, I was there too. Obviously, we were both at the game, and we both talked to the guys after. And the post game was like much more like pissed off, I guess, and but honest than it was their last home loss. And I mean, Geeky did give probably the strongest answers, but McAvoy was right there too. McAvoy was very unhappy and talked about their defensive lapses and how it's him and Zadorov both talked about it being mental and not physical. And we can get into how the defensemen were in the game, but my opening shift has to do with those lapses where we were at the beginning of the season. We were talking about how we didn't know if this roster had enough offense to outscore its mistakes. And I think we thought of it in a totally different way. It's turned out to be true the last few games, but I didn't think it was going to be they score 5, but they give up 7. I thought it would be they let up 3, but they only score 2 because they just can't find the scoring from the other parts of the lineup besides maybe the first line. That's not been what's happening. They've been able to put up 5 goals on multiple occasions and not come away with wins in those games. And Zadorov said every time you score 5 goals, you should be winning that game. And he's right. I've heard many, many coaches say this as well. And we can talk about whether or not it's a systems thing, if it's a systematic Sturm defense problem, or if it's individual mistakes and mental lapses that just end up with a puck in the back of the net. But I will say, Scott, you mentioned this to me in like frustration during the game. Like, I think it's time to split up McAvoy and Lohrei. And I had multiple comments to tweets that I put out yesterday that said the same thing. A lot of people seeing that pair, which should be your top pair, has been on the ice for some big mistakes, goals against, and it doesn't seem to be working right now. So the problem is if you get Lindholm back, maybe you just go right to Lindholm McAvoy. Try that, throw that on the ice next game. But if Lindholm's not healthy, which he missed last night's game against Anaheim again, and Jordan Harris, since like 5 minutes after we recorded our last podcast, was put on IR with a lower body injury. They called up Michael Callahan. Like the options for what they can rotate on defense in terms of their pairings is limited until Lindholm comes back. I mean, we talked about it before the season. It's a huge loss when he's out of the lineup. And some of those defensive mistakes probably don't happen if he's out there. He can cover for guys, and he also just doesn't really make quite as many mistakes as somebody like, say, Mason Lohrei. But yeah, Brian, this actually leads into what you wanted to say, because just talking about what can they do, what can they change, and Sturm gave an interesting answer on personnel and how he could or could not change it.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in just a second. I just want to quick comment on something that you said, Bridget, and it's the McAvoy Lohrei pairing supposed to be your top pairing, and it's like, well, damn. I mean, Lohrei had a minus 43 last year. Like, I think we've talked about heading into the year how it could potentially work for those two, but he's just not a good defensive defenseman, obviously. I think that so. I think you're right to say when Lindholm is healthy, if Lindholm is healthy, whenever that is, I would staple him next to McAvoy. I just think, yeah, there's too much proof in the pudding at this point. I'm sorry, but I just don't see Mason Lohrei becoming a hard defensive defenseman to play against. I don't. But we'll see. Yeah, so Marco Sturm was talking after the game, and he made a comment about how the guys are committed. They're working extremely hard. Then he said most of the guys, some guys have to pick it up. Now I'm curious, and you two can give me your answer in a little bit, who he might be talking about there. But moving on, Ty Anderson followed up that comment that Sturm made with a question saying, how much longer would he give guys who aren't buying in, working hard to fix that before making some drastic changes? And then part of Sturm's quote, which is just a little snippet of it, was, "There's not many changes I can make, let's be honest." And so there's a lot more that Sturm said in that response, and we'll get to that. But what did you guys make of that? Of that exchange, of his tone, of his commentary? What does that say between the relationship between Sturm and Sweeney? Did you take that as Sturm saying, "It's not my call, it's Sweeney's, and then until he does something, this is who I have"? Or did you take that as Sturm liking who he has in Boston? Or how'd you guys make of those comments?
I was actually kind of surprised, or I should say, I was pretty surprised when he didn't say like, "Oh yeah, of course we have to, just give a regular coach's answer. We have to evaluate who's playing and reward and whatever." Normally that would just be the answer, and it wasn't, and it was almost like with like a smirk, like, "What am I supposed to do with this roster?" kind of is what I felt he was getting at in real time, being in the room. The rest of the quote was, "The roster I have, not too many changes will be made. You can tweak a few things, but that's about it. I don't think too many changes can be made, let's be honest. So the guys in here, including me, the guys in the room, we have to fix it." Scott, I don't know if you read into it differently. To me, a few things popped into my mind. Either he does not believe in the guys in Providence that, that are better. He doesn't think they're better options, was part of what I got. And kind of, we have what we have. Now we have to try to make that work. But it was puzzling to me. And I did want to read a few comments that I got on that tweet, because I posted that last night, because it got reaction from the fans as well, because we get a lot of emails and we get a lot of responses about, "Oh, shouldn't they call up this or that guy? I wanted to see younger guys." And I think this was not a response that those types of fans really were happy with.
Yeah, I think I heard it pretty differently than a lot of people. I thought this is how a coach is supposed to respond to that question, because the last thing you want to do is give the guys in the room any excuses or have them thinking that someone else is going to come along to save them. No, the message that you deliver to your team is, we have to fix this. This group right here needs to fix this. So even if Sturm and Don Sweeney are talking about waving a couple guys, calling a couple guys up, you don't give that team in that room that excuse. You don't make them think, "Oh, if we just change out a couple players, we'll be fine." No, everyone in that room needs to fix it. Like, by the way, like, what changes? Like last night, Charlie McAvoy and Mason Lohrei were bad as a pairing. What changes are you making that's like gonna make Charlie McAvoy better? You know what I mean? Like, your top line was on for a couple goals against. What changes are you making that's going to get them dialed in defensively? No, like, these guys, these players who are here right now need to do it. Like, they need to be better. Period. It's like, all right. I mean, I guess you can wave Johnny Beecher and call someone up, but like, we just said it. People want to see Matt Potch or Fabian Lysell. Okay, that's fine. If this season is gonna be just another lost year, I want to see those guys too. But right now, in the here and now, we're talking about fixing the defense. Okay, like, I don't know that those guys are helping with that. So, I just think, I didn't think it was any. First off, I thought it was reality that, like, it's only going to be a couple changes, if anything. And secondly, I thought this was him not letting the team that's here off the hook, and demanding that they're the ones who have to fix it.
Accountability. Like, I think that's exactly right, Scott. That's exactly what you want to be doing if you're Sturm in a situation. I completely agree. I also just want to say, Bridge, before you read some comments that you got.
Can I just counter that too? Like, accountability also means losing your spot if you don't perform. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I
That's
understand
fair.
that. Then
repercussions.
sit Charlie McAvoy and Elias Lindholm, and I mean, like Victor Arvidsson. Yes, I would sit. Like there's a couple. If you were healthy in defense, I would bench Mason Lohrei. Absolutely. Like there's a couple of those. Yes, but like your top guys have been some of the biggest problems, and you're not really benching them. Like you just need them to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's some glaring combinations that aren't working. I mean, McAvoy Lohrei doesn't work, and I know Lindholm's out. That hurts things. Is McAvoy and Zadorov much better? You know what? I don't know, but I can promise you, I feel like McAvoy. I just feel like he's babysitting a lot out there with Lohrei, and I don't. I'm not saying he wouldn't have to babysit Zadorov either, but Zadorov's a pro. He's been around for a long time. You
I mean,
know,
Zadorov's playing well. I
I
think
know
he's
he
been their.
is.
I think he's been their best defenseman this season.
No, I know. But we all know that Zadorov, like anybody, is prone to
Yeah.
making some stupid mistakes. But yeah, I mean, Zadorov's a pro. He's been around for a long time. Like I think McAvoy doesn't have. He can. Yeah, I just think like something like that. I think they could tinker with, and maybe they will. But I just wanted to say because you guys are right. The offense hasn't been the problem. Dot dot dot. Yet. I'm still concerned that long term, we're talking about a team that won't be able to score enough to when they are defending well. Now, I don't want to complain about something that hasn't happened yet. But I cannot sit here and say, "Oh, they're going to be putting up 5 goals every 3 games all year." I just don't see it with this team. That doesn't change the fact that right now their team defense is the biggest issue. But I just don't want to act like offense isn't an issue with this team too. And I think that's when you see people saying, "Well, why not call up Potter because their team is 30th in team defense right now. So how much worse could he really be?" Well, defense isn't the issue right now. I mean, scoring's not the issue right now. It's defense, and Potter doesn't help the defense. I get that. I know, but I'm talking big picture, right? I still think big picture. I'd rather Matt Potter get reps over, honestly, pick a forward in the bottom 6, like at least here and there, right? Like hell, Victor Arvidsson. You just said it, Scott. I'm done with Victor Arvidsson, but he's got a $4 million cap hit, and they're not going to staple him to the 9th floor until they're just not.
Yeah, I think Casey Middlestad has responded for the most part since the healthy scratch. Arvidsson is very much still a black hole on that second line in that middle 6, which that second line wasn't the quote unquote problem Thursday night. They were one of the few groups, lines, pairings that wasn't out there for a goal against. So, you can't really rip them too much for this one.
Arvidsson was the only plus, right? Or he was one of the only. That line might have been the only line that had a plus. Yeah, I think he was a +1. Everybody else.
Oh yeah, Arvidsson and Zadorov were both +1. They were the only 2 pluses.
Mm-hmm.
Give Arvidsson more minutes, I say.
He had, by the way, he had the fewest minutes last game,
yeah.
Right? I believe but like your second line should not be getting the fewest minutes of anybody. But that's kind of a discussion for after we get to the finish off on this topic, I guess.
I mean, Middlestat, I understand. Like, you trade for him in the Coyle trade, you get Zellers back, right? Like, that was what we think was the prize in that acquisition. But Casey Middlestat's an young-ish still NHLer with potential. Like, I understand him being on the roster because maybe you even had to take him to get Zellers if they wanted Zellers the most. Arvidsson, and I've been saying this for months, they didn't have to fucking trade for him at the last hour before free agency for a $4 million cap hit for a guy who's been Jekyll and Hyde and injury prone for the last 4 seasons of his career. I just don't understand. Like, I do understand. Okay, I get that they were thinking to themselves, this could be a tough year. Let's get some professionalism in this locker room. And I get all that. I do. Victor Arvidsson, I'm sure, is a pro's pro in that room on the practice ice. And hell, he works his ass off on the ice too. So from a humanity perspective and an off-ice leadership perspective and on-ice leadership perspective, I get it. But it's still a production league. And if you're going to be in a top 6 role, you have to produce. If you want to be Victor Arvidsson and fly around on the 4th line and be that guy, all right. But when you're stapled into the top 6 and you really weren't a completely necessary addition, there's going to be eyes on that, and there's going to be criticism that comes with it.
I think the only counter that you would hear to that, or what Sweeney would say to that, is that was like the only option that they felt like they had. Because you remember when like the timeline of this happening was on the backdrop of free agency and everybody signing back with their old teams, and like, all right, we need to add a middle 6 guy. Obviously, we need to take a stab, like a shot in the dark, on somebody we think could play on the second line, and there wasn't much else of an option. So,
I mean,
but that doesn't mean it was a great choice. Like you could argue, it was too much cap space and whatever you want to say.
and that's fair. That's fair,
Yeah.
Bridget. I would also say like there's internal options, but also there were some other cheaper additions out there that could have been like, what did JVR sign for in Detroit? I mean, you know what he is in here. I'm not saying JVR is like a savior, but if you're talking compared to Arvidsson, I feel like there were some other guys that you could have gotten for similar money in free agency that weren't life changing, but okay, maybe a guy you can pencil in for a year.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Like, I get what they were thinking. They were going to give him more opportunity than he had in Edmonton. Sturm has been around him before. He likes him. Arvidsson's been a good player in the past. And he's in the final year of his deal. So either you just have him for 1 year, maybe he helps you do something, or hopefully he puts up some points in an elevated role, and then you flip him at the deadline and you get something in return. Like, I got the thinking. I thought it was a relatively low risk move, but yeah, but like in the here and now, it is another cap hit that you look at right now and you're like, that doesn't, that's not worth it. Like someone made a comment to me on Twitter. This was a few games back now. I think it was after the Vegas and Colorado games, and it was like something along the lines of it's amazing that these teams are playing with the same salary cap structure, and like they're all relatively the same payroll. Like they're all pretty close to the cap, and Vegas and Colorado have what they have, and the Bruins have what they have. And it's just like, yeah, you just kind of go through this, and it's like, yeah, Elias Lindholm overpaid at 7.75. Casey Middlestad overpaid at 5.75. Arvidsson at 4. Tanner Jeannot at 3.4. Sean Corrali's getting almost 2 mil. On defense, you gave Henry Jokiharju $3 million a year. Lohrei making 3.2. And it just kind of like all adds up where, Korpisalo $3 million as a backup. And it's like none of those are, they're not like insanely egregious on their own, but it just all adds up to where you have this team that's $2 million under the cap, and it's like, man, like where is that money going? It's so much of it is just being spent on pretty replaceable players, certainly at their cap hits. I mean, Elias Lindholm is producing on the power play. Do you guys know he has 0 5-on-5 points this season?
So all 7 have come on the power play.
On the power play, or I think there might have been a 4-on-4 mixed in there.
I mean, he also, I did not know that, Scott. It kind of checks out because he hasn't seemed very good 5-on-5. But I guess one good thing about him is 7 points in 9 games is 7 points in 9 games, and he's leading the league in faceoff percentage right now. But yeah, point taken.
Yeah, I do want to make sure I want to finish my thought at least on the reinforcement thing, because I still think there's stuff here that we should talk about with it. And I, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to read some of the comments that I got on the tweet. And first one says, too many fourth liners and AHL players on this roster. Then they're like, great job, Don Sweeney. This one, I feel that Sturm has asked to pull some people from Providence, and Sweeney said no. And then the next one, you have 4 to 5 better players in Providence and refuse to give them a chance. Oh, well, going for McKenna is probably the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if people want to interpret Sturm's I don't know that there's any evidence that Don Sweeney has forced players on Sturm that he doesn't want. It doesn't really seem that way to me. In fact, like you hear Sturm talk about Jeffrey VL and why he moved him to the third line, and it's like Marco Sturm loves Jeffrey VL.
Yeah, he does.
And like that, people are like, why is he here? Why is he playing on the third line? And it's like, that's a Marco Sturm decision. That Don Sweeney's not forcing that on him. Like I think Sturm wanted Beecher because he was unsure about penalty killers. I don't know if he still feels that way. The penalty kill's been good. Maybe he might feel like Beecher's a little more expendable now. I don't know. But I don't think Sturm has been forced to like keep or play anyone that he doesn't want. I think he's had a say in this roster construction. And I think if he were like banging on Don Sweeney's door saying, get me Mate Blumel or get me Matt Patra, I think that they would probably be here. I don't know. Maybe I have that wrong. Maybe I'm giving Sturm too much credit. Maybe this is all Don Sweeney's doing and Sturm has no say, but I don't get that impression.
No, and he also, I feel like the same would have happened, Scott, had he said, I want Patra and or Blumel on this opening night roster. Right? Sweeney would have waived Jeffrey VL if he had to, or, like so I do think that, I don't think Marco Sturm is the victim in this situation. Like, I do believe that he's looking at a roster he's trying to implement professional. He's trying to ice a professional roster, a roster that will play the right way, play to his system, and establish that system and identity. That way, when players come in later on, it's kind of already established. He doesn't want to be establishing a system with Matt Patra and Mate Blumel and Fabian Lysell. He wants them, if ever, to just kind of fit into it when it's already established. But the problem is, that's great, but you don't have the speed and talent up and down this roster to succeed. So I guess my question is, what's the goal, right? What is the goal for Marco Sturm? He's been very transparent that this is not an elite roster, that he's not about the wins and losses, he's about the structure. Well, okay, but the structure hasn't been there, Marco. And I do think that the lack of speed and skill is hindering their ability, because they're not, first of all, they're chasing their opponents around the ice. When you chase, you're defending. When you're defending, you're fatigued. When you're fatigued, you take penalties. And then when the puck's on your stick, they don't have enough talent to make plays efficiently enough in all three zones. And I just think it leads to too much inconsistency out there. And you add to that the man-on-man system that they go to in the D zone. And here's the problem with man-on-man in the D zone. There's a reason most teams go to zone. Zone, you got it, Scott?
Well, yeah, just to jump in, like that they're actually playing a hybrid, and I think that's part of the problem. Is like I don't know that everyone's on the same page when it comes to when they're switching between man-to-man and zone. They're not getting man-to-man switches right just on its own, but I also don't think they're getting when to switch like that. The first Anaheim goal last night, where Castle gets picked out high in the zone, probably should have been a penalty, but that happens. Like, you're not always going to get that call. From there, Drew Hellison just gets to walk through the right circle all alone because no one switches over to him. And it's like that they were clearly in man-on-man because everyone kind of was on their guy. But once that pick happens, like, someone has to go over to that area of the ice to slow him down. Like, you can't just let a guy walk through the circle in on goal all alone. And Corrali was like stuck on his guy in front, doesn't come off. Lohrei thinks he has to cover the guy in the slot. He doesn't go off to go after him. And, I know we'll get to the last goal too, because that was the even more obvious, more egregious one. Like, there's clearly a switch that should happen between McAvoy and Lohrei, and McAvoy literally tries to push Lohrei like out to the corner, like, go challenge that guy. He doesn't, and in the meantime, while McAvoy's trying to direct Lohrei and like give him a push, he lets Troy Terry get right behind him and he's wide open in front. And now you have two defensemen just stuck in no man's land because they didn't switch and they both ended up not covering anyone. They're both just standing in the same space. Like,
which kind of covers what we were saying before, like McAvoy having to pay too much attention to what Lohrei is doing is making him less effective.
Yeah, and you're right, Scott. It is more of a hybrid, and I think that there's a question to be had afterwards as we move on here about should it be one or the other? Because the problem is the reason most teams run a zone defense is because zone's more forgiving, right? It just is. You can allow guys to kind of be on the perimeter, and you just bottle up, and you see it in football. You see it in every sport. Everybody knows what zone is.
Yeah.
The problem
basketball.
with
I know I don't look like I would have been a good basketball player, but good zone help defense. And
the problem with man on man though is that man on man can work for 99% of a single shift. Everybody can be on their guy. Everybody's following their guy. You're doing it. You're executing it perfectly. But all it takes is one pick, one funny bounce, one great play by the other team, and confusion and chaos takes place, and it just takes that split second to end up in the back of your net. So it's not, it's if you watch back the film when they are in man on man, they seem to be fine until they're not at the very but that's the problem with man on man. It doesn't take much. It's not very forgiving. And so is this not the roster for any type of man on man coverage? Right? Like it is the construction or the attributes of the players, is it not the right mix of players? I don't know if man on man requires I wouldn't say the Bruins back end aren't good skaters. So I'm not. I know it's a team thing, and it's not just the defense; it's the forwards too. But I don't know, guys. And also sometimes it's a bad goal. Like I thought Korpisalo was really good earlier on in the first period, but yeah, I mean that Jacob Trouba goal, that's on the goaltending. That's not D zone coverage. So it's just always something with these guys, right?
Yeah,
and it's a little bit of both. Like it's stuff just compiled. Like the Trouba goal, VL lost Trouba. Like Trouba was his guy. VL just didn't pick him up, pinching down on the rebound. But yeah, then it's a soft goal. Cutter Gauthier finds a soft spot out in the high slot. Looked like he got inside Pasternak, was closest defender. But then it beats Korpisalo 5-0. Like you need a save there. So yeah, it's you're making mistakes, and then specifically in the case of Thursday night, your goalie's also not bailing out those mistakes.
Yeah, I have one more comment on the roster too before we can, put this one to bed, I guess. But the comment was off-season plan was to sign a lot of fourth liners at a good contract so they can tank and easily move these guys during the trade deadline and have a shot at McKenna. This roster is horrible.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't the plan. Like that's not what they were trying to do. That might be what ends up happening, but we said this before. Like the overwhelming majority of teams do not tank on purpose, and the Bruins aren't either. That was not the plan going into the season. If it turns out that way, it's because they just simply weren't good enough, and that's where they end up. Like you can tank from the trade deadline on. You can sell and do what the Bruins did last year, but you don't. The Bruins certainly did not go into this season thinking, you know what? We're just gonna suck and we'll try to get Gavin McKenna. Like that. People might think that was their plan. It wasn't. I promise you that.
Can I ask a crazy question? And I don't want to derail with this question, but it just kind of popped into my head. Is Don Sweeney's job in any danger this year? And I say is that a crazy question because one would think, well, after back to back, if this year ends up being a really bad season, it's a bottom 5 finish for them again. It's very easy to be someone who says, you just finished bottom 5 2 years in a row, buddy, you're out. But I could also see a crazy situation where like you end up with a lottery pick and you end up with a Gavin McKenna or Keaton Verhoff or something like that, and ownership's like, all right, Don, you got your pieces now. Now we trust you. I don't know. I don't know what Sweeney has to do to not to get fired. But that's just the dynamic I feel like it's at play with the Bruins right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean he just signed an extension this past offseason, and in my mind, I thought at the time that buys him 2 years. He had 1 year left, then he signed a 2-year extension. Team owners will be willing to buy out the final year of a contract. What I really would have a hard time seeing is buying out that entire 2-year extension before it even starts. And that's what you're doing if you fire Don Sweeney this season. So I don't think his job is in jeopardy this year, but if it goes really poorly, I mean, like if this is like worst record in the league type of season, or if we get into like the middle of this year and it's like, wow, Marco Sturm's not the coach for this. Like if Marco Sturm's coming up short, well, that was a really big hire, and you only have to fire so many coaches before you get fired. So if it's really bad enough, then yes, like honestly, like everyone's job is in jeopardy at that point, and including Cam Neely as well, I would say.
Who's pulling that trigger? Charlie Jacobs? Does he have the spine to do it? He seems somebody who's very comfortable with these guys.
Do you have some empty buildings in February, March down the stretch? Like,
We'll
do the ratings plummet? There are things that get Charlie Jacobs' attention.
Money. Yeah. But yeah, like Scott said, when he signed the extension, it seemed like the plan was last year, obviously. Normally when it comes down to it, it's like, all right, are you going to fire the coach or the GM? And then they fired the coach, and Monty's gone last year. And then, the second half of the season, Sacco takes over. And then they decide to sell at the trade deadline. And I feel like he got permission to do that with the assurance that it wasn't going to cost him his job if they finished bottom of the league, like that this was part of the plan. And obviously he kept his job after that. Drafted Higgins. I think they're going to give him more time. I think the agreement at the deadline last year was that you're getting more time to see this rebuild through. Because that's what it is. And maybe he gets, and to something we said in our preview of the season before the season started, if he finishes last in the league, I think they take that as maybe a positive. Like you finish dead last, it's like great.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm like, I don't even see a situation where they fire him. It's this crazy world that we're living in right now, where Sweeney is just the one guy I just feel like isn't living in a results-driven business right now. Like, because I think everybody knows that this team is not there yet, and that they do need to continue to get better internally with high draft picks. So it's we make the playoffs. Oh, great, or we get a top 10 pick in. Hey, like, you know what I mean? That's how they lucked into Higgins. Let's be honest about that.
I was gonna say though, but even if you're bad and you're in the lottery again, like, what if you right now the Bruins have the 4th worst record in the NHL at 3-6. Let's say you finish with the 4th worst record, but then maybe the lottery doesn't bounce your way again. You slip to the 5th pick, and now you're not getting Gavin McKenna or Keaton Verhoff, and you just absolutely sucked. Like, now, again, like, you have to worry about how much longer does David Pastrnak want to stick around. And I'm even going to, I'll leave out McAvoy and Swayman because those should be core pieces that are part of your foundation. McAvoy for sure is not playing like it right now. I think Swayman's been fine, probably needs to be better. But David Pastrnak is a superstar. He's one of the 10 best players in the world, maybe one of the 5 best. If he gets fed up with this and wants out, now you're looking at a really long rebuild. Right? Like, unless you just absolutely nail some of these picks, knock them out of the park. Like, now you're starting to look at being one of these decade-long rebuild teams. Like, Buffalo's an extreme example because they're into 15 years of this, but like Montreal is just pulling out of a decade of sucking. The Red Wings look like they might finally be pulling out of a decade of sucking. Ottawa, same thing. Like, that's where you start to become one of those teams. And I maintain that I don't think anyone in this organization from the top down has any appetite for that. So if you end up, if you're Don Sweeney and you did a poor enough job putting this team together, that suddenly that's on the horizon where it's like, oh boy, this is not going to be 2, 3, or even 4 years. I don't know how his job wouldn't be. Like, I don't think ownership would be looking at that as a positive.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead, Bridget.
I was gonna say a comment that stuck out to me in Don Sweeney and Jacobs and Neely's press conference before the season was when he was asked about the prospect pool, and he answered about knowing they need to restock the shelves and like that being what he was doing in the trade deadline. And it's like, I think he's been given the go ahead to restock the shelves, meaning that's the priority. Probably it was at the end of last year, and it could very easily be the priority at the end of this year to replenish the prospect pool, which is obviously more of a long-term goal and solution than it is doing anything for this year.
Well, this goes back to what I've mentioned in the past, which is it's just the worst timing possible for a rebuild. I mean, you're talking about rebuilding simultaneous to McAvoy and Pasternak's primes. It's a dangerous territory. But I do think that that's kind of where we're at right now. The good news is that, I do think drafting Higgins bought them some time, right? I think if you would have grabbed David Pasternak and just give him some truth serum and say, hey, are you fed up with this team? He'd be like, nah, look, I mean, I think we obviously have a tough go right now, but I know maybe they don't pay attention to draft picks, especially high caliber ones. Maybe that it's beneath them to really care about their prospect system. I do think Higgins was a projected number 1 overall pick they got. Obviously he fell in the rankings a little bit, but I think Pasternak knows enough that Higgins has a really bright future in the league. And, wherever they draft this June will be predicated on how this season goes. And so if you have Higgins coming at the end of this year, or certainly to start next year, and potentially somebody in a very high caliber, deep draft from this June that could potentially push for a roster spot, like now you're starting to see a couple of kids coming in that can make impacts. That's probably encouraging for David Pasternak, but at some point he's going to want out if they continue to suck. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and that, but I also think like a key point there is, I think it's easy for someone like David Pasternak to feel optimistic about James Higgins coming along in, maybe 6 months, maybe next summer, whenever. If it feels like they've made progress this year and that they've established something and they've grabbed a foothold where, like, we thought, I think the way a lot of people thought the season might go is like they'll be competitive, good defense, good goaltending, but they're probably not going to score enough. If that's what this season was or is, because it still could become that, and you're hanging around and you're, within a couple of points of a playoff spot, but you feel like you've reestablished a culture and identity, then you're like, oh yeah, and we have this really talented kid coming who's going to help our offense. And like, boom, like there's part of the solution that gets us to the next step. But if that competitiveness isn't there and the structure isn't reestablished and this team just straight up sucks and loses a lot of games, and it's like, wow, we haven't found a new defensive foundation and maybe goaltending isn't lifting us up. And oh, by the way, we're also at some point not scoring enough. Like, then it's harder to be like, hey, but at least we have James Higgins coming along, because now you have way more problems than a couple young talented forwards can fix or help you overcome. Like, now you have much deeper issues.
Yeah,
and guys like first round draft picks, especially somebody like Higgins, like up high in the first round, they're going to come in and they're going to help, but they have an adjustment period too to the league. It's not like they're going to come in and be prime, star right from the beginning of their career. Like they have to adjust to the NHL too. So even if you're like, okay, if you're Pasternak and he's coming, like, well, how long is it going to take for him to get up to NHL speed? And you know what I mean? Like that could be another year or two that we're talking into the contract or more. Like you don't know how quickly someone's going to develop at that level.
Unless you're Matthew Schaefer, who looks awesome right out of the gate.
Oh, what a skater!
Islanders.
What a skater! What a skater! I get. Look, there are some good things with this Bruins team this year, despite the 6-game losing streak in regulation. That's going to mask all the good, but outside of last night and maybe like the goaltending has been. It's given them a chance to win, I feel like, most games. And the special teams, certainly the penalty kill, but the power play has had its moments too. The special teams has been okay overall. The scoring, the team scoring, I think they're middle of the league in scoring. If they can figure their shit out defensively, you can have a year where there's progress. And I do think, for what it's worth, they have fought back in a lot of these games that would have been runaway trains last year. So you can say that there's intangible building there too from last year. So I just think right now defensively, the absence of Hampus Lindholm is tough. It just is. And as I've said before, I'm not confident that that's going to be this won't be an ongoing thing throughout the year. And hopefully it's not, but we'll see. But I just think Mason Lohrei, he's not good defensively. How many times do we have to talk about this? And you're relying on him too much. He makes too many mistakes. He plays well, but you can't make. It seems like every game there's some big mistake that you just wish he had back. Because if you took it back, you look at his game and say, hey, he actually played pretty well. But those mistakes, they're too costly. And I just think how it's affecting McAvoy, like, is it taking away from his game? I don't know. They got to figure that out. If they do, then they can get back to having some growth this year. But I don't know. I just feel like, Lohrei's development, and we talked about it before the season, defensively is a big thing for them. So I feel like he's been okay at times, but just too many costly mistakes.
He had a goal. Like, he had a power play goal. It was
Yeah. But defensively is what I'm like. I know
I know.
he can contribute offensively and make plays and stuff. That's never a question with him. It's the other side of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of numbers on that pairing, Lohrei-McAvoy this year. At 5-on-5, talking about 110 minutes together. Bruins have been outscored 9-6 with them out there. And expected goals, 44%. That's just not nearly good enough. Like, and I don't want to pin it all on Lohrei either, because McAvoy has not been good enough this season.
He hasn't.
And that's not all just, he's trying to cover for Lohrei. Like, no, McAvoy on his own needs to be better. But like, any pairing McAvoy's on should be over 50% expected goals. Like, the Bruins should get more chances than they give up when he's on the ice. And part of the reason why they started with this pairing together is last year, when Lohrei and McAvoy played together, they were over 50% on an also bad team. So again, like we talked about it going into the year, I get why Marco Sturm wanted to start with that. I get why he thought there was something there that he wanted to see, but it's not there this year. And I think you're putting Mason Lohrei in situations where he's just going to keep getting exposed. And like, it's a tough role to be in, to fix your game when he's struggling as much as he is right now. So like Bridget, to your idea earlier, like, yes, when Hampus Lindholm is back, I know Lindholm McAvoy together has been a little hit or miss at times, but I'm trying that. Like, I want to see that. Then put Zadorov and Peak, they were together Thursday night. I thought that was a good pairing. Put that as your second pair on a really good team. That's ideally a third pair, but you got to live with what you have right now. Make that your second pair, and then you shelter Lohrei in a third pairing role, whether it's with Yoki Haru or with Callahan, or maybe even depending on matchups, you scratch Lohrei. I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world to give him a night or two off at this point. So
We have we got a few emails too that, and one of them Kim sent was like almost exclusively about Lohrei. Would you want to touch on that here?
sure, yeah.
So she says, I don't think Lohrei and McAvoy complement each other. Mason seemed to thrive last year playing with Carlo. Do you think there's anyone on the roster down in Providence that would be a good partner for him based on Carlo's skill set? And I just want to say, first of all, I think we kind of know what the answer to that is. I don't think they're calling any defensemen up from Providence unless there's another injury. I just don't think that's where the solution is, but I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, it's. I don't down in Providence. I mean, you're talking. No, it's just not happening. But it's Hampus Lindholm, and the problem for me with Lohrei, guys, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but when you're a top pairing defenseman, that means you're playing against the world's very best. And especially in this hybrid man-on-man zone covers the Bruins are running, and teams we've seen so far the Bruins play, how confident do you feel in Mason Lohrei's one-on-one coverage with Nathan MacKinnon or Jack Eichel? These guys will carve him alive because he's not a strong defensive defenseman. So that's the exposure that Scott, I think you mentioned a minute ago. Like, they're just putting him in matchups and situations they just don't benefit him. Mason Lohrei's reach and skating ability could help him in situations against teams' third line forwards, maybe sometimes teams' second line forwards, certainly the fourth line forwards. But when you're talking about the best of the best in the world today, they're gonna see one little thing about Lohrei's stick positioning or body position that's off, and they just expose him. That's how good these guys are. And I just don't see that. That's not something that you can teach Lohrei, not against the best of the best. It's unfair to him, honestly.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't even think Lohrei Carlo was a good pairing last year either. Like, I don't remember. I remember them struggling, and the numbers backed it up. They got, when they were together, which wasn't much, that wasn't a very common pairing, but Bruins got doubled up in goals, 10-5, and expected goals were 36%. Like, that was the only pairing Lohrei was good on, had serviceable numbers on last year, was with McAvoy. He wasn't good with Carlo. He wasn't good with Peak. He wasn't nearly good enough in general. Like, this is, which gets to just a larger problem in terms of his career trajectory, which is like, okay, like, you gave him this bridge deal. You want him to prove himself. You hope he is part of your solution in the top four going forward, but there's just a lot of work that has to be done, and clearly still development that has to happen, and just improvement that has to happen. And it's not happening so far this season. Marco Sturm has been open about that. He's been adamant that, he's working with them, and he's been pretty public about what Lohrei needs to work on to, just defending harder, just being more attentive 100% of the time, not having these lapses. Like, even the face-off that we talked about in the Florida game that comes back. Like, I did ask Sturm about that at morning skate on Thursday. How does he want that played? And his answer was basically like, it's not even a tactical thing. We just need to be more aggressive and be harder. Like, Lohrei and Jeannot both, like, right off the draw, just need to be quicker jumping in there, like, more on their toes, not approaching it timidly, not kind of just reaching in. Like, Lohrei kind of just reaches in and tries to poke it away. Like, he just needs him to be decisive and forceful, and that's not part of Lohrei's game right now.
And Bridget, you mentioned Providence, Frederic Brunet. I do like Frederic Brunet's game. I'm not saying you sticking with McAvoy right now. Which is kind of how I took the question. I know Michael Callahan got the call up, and I've liked his game for the most part. He's a good, steady defenseman, and Ryan Mougenel apparently told Sturm he's been our best guy down here. But I do like Frederic Brunet's game. I think he's a guy who can bring you some compete and two-way play on the back end. Obviously, without seeing him much at the NHL level, it's tough to really know what he would be. But as far as guys in Providence, I like him.
Yeah, he had during the preseason, he had a few bombs from the blue line, and some of them went on goal. Some of them were, nice tippable shots. But another part to her question, which this is a really quick, easy answer, Scott, I think you'll have this right. She says, "Is Lohrei on a one-way or a two-way deal? I feel like he needs maybe 2 weeks in Providence to get some confidence back and then come back up." This is a quick answer.
Yeah, he would need to clear waivers to be sent down, and it's
He wouldn't.
also, like, just to clarify, like, one way, two way doesn't refer to whether someone can be sent to Providence. That's just about pay. Two way, you get paid differently in the AHL than the NHL. So Lohrei's contract is fully guaranteed, and he would need to clear waivers to be sent down.
Yeah,
But
so that's
but going to Providence and developing in Providence is not helping his defensive metrics against his
Right.
defensive ability against the top players in the world, which he's been doing. He needs to either be slotted appropriately on this team, or they got to find a way to move him. They got to be honest with themselves. And look, that's part of what this process is for him and the Bruins. Like, it's okay that he's in the lineup right now. It's okay that he's struggling, because it allows people to see what's what. Hopefully he plays well, and it's not the case. But when the time comes, if they deem that he is not a player that's going to be a good defensive player, and I'm sorry, but when you're a defenseman, you have to be able to play the position. You can't just be, oh well, he can move the puck well and skate, and he's good power play op. Well, no, you got to play defense, and so again, that's why it's a bridge deal. But I don't think they should be afraid to move him if it's another down year and they can get something for him. I know he's a young player, but like at some point you can either see it with the kid or you can't. And I can see it with him, certainly offensively. And defensively, he has moments where I'm like, yeah, he's playing well today. But you just can't make glaring mistakes nearly every game. It just can't happen. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be down on the kid, but he can't have it, you know? I did have a positive I wanted to bring up too, though, if you
okay.
guys will indulge me here.
Okay.
Morgan Geeky has, I just want to pull up again. So he's got 7 points through 9 games right now. And Pavel Zacha has 9 points through 9 games. Both of those players didn't have those point totals match or exceed those point totals until December 1st of last year. So that's a good thing, right? Like, you're talking about players that had, an underwhelming year in Zacha, and then Geeky had a really strong year, but a bad start. So the question is, can he sustain it? And that's a positive for the Bruins. The fact that Zacha and Geeky have started on time in the production category, and hell, even Elias Lindholm. I know, Scott, you mentioned the 5-on-5 numbers. That's definitely worth bringing up. But we've talked about how so far offense hasn't been the problem for this team, but I think they deserve a mention because they've gotten off to good starts compared to last year.
Yeah, and Morgan Geeky honestly should probably have like another 3 goals on top of that. The first, I don't know, handful of games, like, he had some great chances that he just misfired on that I think late, second half of last year, he just buries, no question about it. And he might be getting back to that point now. Like, some big goals these last couple of games from him. He had both tying goals in this Florida and Anaheim game to complete the comeback at the time. Obviously, the Bruins then gave up the winner after, but yeah, he seems to really be finding his touch, and I've just liked his game in general. Like, he looks like he did, the last 4 months of last season, like, fully engaged, locked in. Now starting to bury more chances again. Again, I think what you hear from him post game is, a very accountable, invested player who clearly cares a lot. So if there's any concern about, like, oh, is he going to get paid and be one of these guys who, disengages or isn't fully into it? Like, that does not seem to be happening. I think he's very engaged and invested. And yeah, definitely off to a good start. And Zacha too. I don't know where he ended up at the end of the night, but I tweeted, after his early assist Thursday night, 7 assists puts him in the top 10 in the NHL so far. So yeah, he's doing his job too.
Yeah. Geeky is, I think he's low key, like, has a lot of leadership ability. He answers, like, he's accountable. He's liked by the team, and he seems to be speaking up more since, say last season and this season. I don't know. I think they trust him a lot, and he's earned respect and with his play, and I think just how he approaches the game and the kind of work he puts in and how much he cares, because he that's never been a question for me about his personality. So yeah, I think he's looked good.
I like him a lot on and off the ice, and I absolutely think that he's part of the solution in Boston going forward. I also think that Pavel Zacha very well could be part of the solution as well. But I will say this: if this season goes south of the Bruins and he has a really good season and he's got another year after this at I think it's a $4.75 million cap hit, man, teams will be licking their lips to get him onto their roster for a potential playoff run. And as much as I see him being part of the solution in Boston, he'll be 30 years old when his deal's up. I'm not sure what he would sign for upon that time. But if you're talking, I mean, they brought in Victor Arvidsson to flip him. Right. Okay, they might be able to do that. But if you really want to talk about flipping somebody for something, I think Pavel Zacha, I like him a lot. I want to see him in the Spoke B for as long as possible. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's a good, like I said, I think he's a really strong top 6 Swiss Army knife. But I can't deny the value he would have if for a team.
Yeah, well, it feels like that's, you're right. Like there's kind of like different levels of trade chips. So there's the guys where you're like, yeah, you probably just take whatever you can get. Honestly, Zacha's would be one where it's, you got to blow me away. Like I don't have to trade him. He has another year after this. Yeah, if you want to give me, first round pick, one of your top prospects, Brendan Carlo type of trade package, like, okay, I'll listen. But otherwise, like, yeah, you're not. I know like Zacha's name is still popping up in rumors now, like along with Middlestad, because everyone is talking about how there aren't any centers available, and like this team's looking for centers, and so people mention both Zacha and Middlestad, and it's like, yeah, I think those are and should be two very different approaches from Don Sweeney. Like Middlestad, yeah, you're probably more willing to move if something came along that made sense. Zacha gotta be blown away.
Yeah, I'm my bold prediction to start the year was that I think I said at least 2 of the players on the third line, and then you're like, that's not that bold. So we went with all 3 players on the current second line get traded before the end of the season, which would be Middlestad, Zacha, and Arvidsson. And I mean, I could still see that happening. I could see those 3.
By the way, I gotta give some credit to Bruins fans on social media. I don't know how much this you guys have followed, but anytime like Casey Middlestad scores now, the people who are like quoting it like, can't lose this guy, what a player.
That's funny.
It is
trying like, to drive up the value.
Yeah, like that's good. That's good social media work, Bruins fans.
So guys, their next game is against the Avalanche tomorrow afternoon on Saturday. 3 p.m. start. Then you have Ottawa without Brady Tkachuk, who has been struggling this year. Ottawa, I feel like Ottawa might be one of the only teams in the league that has more goals given up than you, or they're around you.
They have been awful. Yeah. Have you guys seen Linus Ullmark's numbers this season?
No, I have not. Ooh, not good.
Yikes.
Have you seen Mark Katzelik? That's the real question.
Yeah, I mean, like straight up, Ullmark's been one of the worst goalies in the NHL this season.
So you get the Avalanche, you get the Senators, you get the Islanders, and then the Sabres to close out October.
I'm telling you that Islanders game, it's been a while since you've probably been excited at all about an Islanders matchup, but Matthew Schaefer worth the price of admission. Like that, he's fun.
He's very good. So my question to you guys is this. I'll ask 2 questions. Number 1, At 3-6 on a 6-game losing streak, you have the best team in the NHL right now, the Colorado Avalanche, who spanked you up and down the ice last week coming into the Garden. Is that a must-win for this Bruins team? If you're talking about, if you want any chance to get back into the fight and try to have this team make the playoffs, is this Colorado game a must-win? And my second question is, in their final 4 games this month, what is a record, at a worst case scenario record, where you still could say, okay, you're not out of it? Do they have to go 2-2 and finish the month at 5-8, or do they have to go 3? Like, what how are you feeling about the end of this month? Because they can have a strong finish and salvage. And what are your thoughts?
I have a hard time calling Colorado a must win just because I don't at all expect them to win. Like, Colorado's just a much better team. So, but like, that's the situation they've put themselves in by losing 6 in a row. I mean, when you've lost 6 in a row, kind of every game becomes close to a must win. Like, you can't have a losing streak stretch on that long. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm certainly not expecting them to win Saturday. I'm expecting that to be a loss. So I can't pretend I'm going to be like all up in arms, like, up, season's over. But you got to end it. You got to snap this losing streak like real soon. And you got to have some, you're right, like, build some sort of momentum towards the end of this month. Maybe that has to start next week after the Colorado game. I don't like, listen, they're in a big hole. Like, they've dug themselves pretty deep here. So you're not going to pull out of it completely before the end of the month, but if you can just build a little bit of momentum, like, honestly, even if it's like you lose this Colorado game and then you go 2-0-1 and you play some decent hockey those last 3, like, you just got to build some positive momentum. You're not going to climb all the way back and be over 500 by the end of this month. But you got to be feeling a little bit better about where you are.
I would say I thought that last night's game against Anaheim felt like a must win, because it was a winnable game. And they started out with a lead. Middlestat scored, and then they were up 2-1 at one point, and then couldn't extend the lead. And then, as we know, got in a hole, tied the game, gave up another goal right after, ended up losing 7-5. That was more of a must win to me because it could have and should have been a win. Colorado, I don't think I looked at this much.
Sorry to get you up. Like, we barely even mentioned, but like, they were the much better team through 2 periods, and yet it was a 3-3 game. Like, shots were 32-18 through 2 periods. I mean, they spent a lot of time in the Anaheim zone. Like, they were doing a lot of good things, but again, just like breakdown mistake here and there, and it's like, didn't bury some of their chances. And can't believe this game's tied. That's kind of weird. And then the third period, they fall behind.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question about the record, though, what Scott's idea was being like 2-1-1 in the last 4 games of the month, like that feels like probably best case scenario. More than likely, I'm just in a realistic world, obviously best case scenario would be winning out, but just like in a realistic way, that feels like could be attainable.
Yeah.
So
I mean, an overtime loss, we'll have to see to believe. I don't know if this team.
You got to make it there first.
They got to make it there first. No, I think you guys are right. I mean, I think 2-1-1 is. I mean, that's definitely within. That's not very hard to do. Even for the worst teams in the league, you can find those stretches in the season. So, I mean, if that's the case, then you finish the month at 5-7-1. I mean, okay, throw the month behind you and move on, right? But I think ultimately what I see with this team is, and until they prove otherwise, it's just kind of the reality. I think bad teams battle inconsistency. Bad teams don't have good situational hockey and clock awareness, i.e., allowing goals constantly after scoring them. Good teams can't extend their leads. I don't think the Bruins have had a 2-goal lead all year. And bad teams are unlucky, right? Bad teams get those unlucky bounces. Bad teams get who was it on Florida? Carter Verhaeghe denting the post and then having it come back, and Andrew Peak swings and misses and it goes off his foot and in. Like, so that's the reality I think of this month so far is a lot that goes wrong, can go wrong, happens to bad teams, and that's what's happened to the Bruins so far. It's always been something, and to their credit, they haven't given up. And I think that, I think McAvoy said it last night. By the way, who asked that question in the scrum to McAvoy? It was like, miscommunication on the last goal. He's like, "Yep," moved right along.
Yeah, I forget who asked it, but
Was
yeah,
it
that was
Paul DuPont? Was it Paul DuPont? Sounded like Paul DuPont, but I don't know if
maybe.
It wasn't
Yeah.
me.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was a male's voice. But McAvoy mentioned, like, he was kind of saying it out of frustration, but he was like, eventually, the dam's going to break. You would think that's the case. So we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise us. And I think Nikita Zadorov said it last night too. Why not? He went the old Kurt Schilling in 04 in the Red Sox. Why not us? He said, why not beat the Colorado Avalanche on a Saturday in Boston? Like, why not start it then, right? So I'm not holding my breath either, like you, Scott, but I guess time will tell.
And he was asked, does a fight like the Janot fight or something like give a spark? Like, are there ways to manipulate the momentum of a game and different things like that could be helpful? And like somebody like Zadorov could lay a huge hit, or I mean he fights sometimes too, but there are other stuff besides what we've talked about today that unfortunately we didn't get a chance to talk about, like some of the stuff like the Janot fight, but
it was a great fight.
Fucking amazing fight. I was like, oh, he's getting his ass kicked, and then like 10 seconds after that, he's all of a sudden he's winning the fight, and I'm like, I have no idea how, because he had the size disadvantage, and he's just like really strong, incredible fighter.
Yeah, two absolute heavyweights, but there were like two real heavyweight fights in the NHL last night, because there's also Matt Rempe against Ryan Reeves in the Rangers Sharks game.
Yes.
But yeah, Janot and Johnston, like, I think if like, if you could get all the workout measurements and stuff, I'm guessing that's going to be two of the strongest players in the league. Like, Janot is an absolute physical freak, workout warrior, and I think Johnson's kind of the same way.
Something else too last night, because Anaheim, you're right, they did get outplayed for much of the game. I do like their team, though. I mean, keep in mind they were without Radko Gudas for much of that game. He left early with an injury, and Chris Kreider was a healthy scratch, or he was a scratch because he was unable to play. So you watch that Ducks team; their skills evident. I mean, I think that'll be a fun team to watch for a bit here going forward. Leo Carlson, what a talent he is too, and Beckett, is it Seneca?
Yeah.
He impressed me too for a 19-year-old kid. They got something with him too. I remember when he got drafted third overall, he went viral because his face was so shocked that the Ducks drafted him third overall. But he's got good size, and he gets his nose in there, and he's got 19 years old. He's got, I want to say, six or 7 points so far this year. So I know they let Trevor Zegras walk, but I think the Ducks know what they're doing. Like, they have some young talent on the way too.
Hey. And don't forget Frankie V. Okay, my UMass.
Yeah, they got local connections. Obviously, Vetrano, Sam Colangelo, Stoneham native, went to Northeastern, scores a big goal last night. Too many BC guys for my liking. You mentioned Kreider, but boy, some of them stepped up. Hellison with the big goal. Gauthier with a goal. Nikita Nesterenko had 3 assists, 4 assists. Pretty good.
Well, Scott, you're going to be at BC tonight, so you might not want to say that too loud over there.
Yeah, Frank.
Oh no, I'll talk shit to everyone there. I don't care.
Of course, that's
Frank Vetrano, low key. I mean, he had a 37 goal year, but even outside that, you look at his resume throughout his career. He's
been an all-star.
But he's been a consistent average 20 goal scorer. I mean, he has a couple of years beneath it, a couple of years above it. The 37 goal season. I mean, he lit up the Providence before he played for the Bruins, and he was a good player for the Bruins too. But nobody was really crying when they traded him, but he's gone on to have a pretty solid career. He's a top
Wait,
6 forward. I mean,
wait, was he a BC guy before he was a UMass guy too?
He almost
Yeah.
was.
Started at BC.
He was
He
at
almost
BC for
was.
like a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I remember like the thinking at the time, like when the Bruins traded him, was like, oh, maybe he's just a quadruple A player, like he's gonna score in because the Bruins gave him a long look and he just did not score in the NHL. And credit to him, he figured it out and started producing.
Yeah, for the Bruins, he had 39 games played in 15-16 for the Bruins. He had 8 goals, 11 points. 16-17, 44 games played, 10 goals, 18 points. And then 17-18, 25 games, 2 goals. And that's the year he was traded to Florida. So yeah, that 17-18 season probably broke him in Boston's eyes. If he had he was doing fine until that year, and I was like, all right, what do we have in this kid? And he's gone on since then to be really good, pretty good.
He was undrafted, right? Or was he drafted?
Undrafted.
I thought so. So I mean, for a kid at UMass who, I wasn't sure what he was going to be in the pros. Him and Connor Sheary were both on the same team, and I was like, I don't know. And they both went on to have pretty good pro careers. And then Brennan Montour was a 2nd-round pick. He was there that year too. So I don't know. They've all seemed to have gone on and done pretty well.
UMass has had UMass can tip their cap. They got some feathers in their cap in the NHL in recent years. Obviously, Montour, a couple Stanley Cup champions. Makar's the best defenseman in the world. But Vetrano has 317 points in 652 career games. So he's gone on to have, when it's all said and done, he'll probably play, I don't know, 800 plus games. He could close on 900 games maybe. But yeah, he's been half a point guy in the NHL. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, and I mean, and Sheary and Montour both have cups.
Yeah, Sheary too. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how this is my fault. We ended up down this path, but sometimes you got to give some love to UMass. But no. So before we go, I'm gonna plug this again. We talked to Dean Letourneau on This Week in Hockey East. Good answers about his, what he's worked on in the off season, getting stronger, getting the monkey off his back in terms of scoring, but then also just like some silly fun personality questions. Like I rapid fired him with some like just random funny stuff. And he gave some interesting answers to those. So I would say, and Scott already watched the whole episode. Apparently you can watch it on NESN.com or what. Where did you watch it?
It was on YouTube. I don't know if it's supposed to be posted on YouTube, but
apparently you can also watch it on YouTube. Scott already watched the entire episode, not just the interview. But if you want to watch it live,
I've requested advanced screenings of all episodes.
Yeah,
because I gotta write my review. Post that Friday morning, get it up on Rotten Tomatoes.
What he does is he actually sits in the room with me as we record. But yeah, it was a good interview. And obviously this is a Bruins podcast. He's a Bruins 1st-round pick, and maybe he's about to have a breakout season. We talked to him about his year so far, and he was fun. So I say you should watch it.
Yeah, big game at Connie Friday night. Top 10 matchup against Denver, team that knocked BC out last season
and the year before.
Yeah, I think
they beat him in the title game.
And then
Yep. All right, guys. Well, anything else before we sign out?
Nope.
No, sir.
I think I'm good.
All right, Scott, how was the Springsteen movie?
Good. Not great.
Okay.
But good. I was satisfied. Wasn't blown away. But I really like that part of his career that it focused on. I really like the book that it's based on, Deliver Me from Nowhere. So yeah, I was satisfied. It takes a few too many liberties, but I guess you got to kind of expect that from Hollywood.
Would you recommend someone waits till it comes out on streaming, or to go into the movies and watch it?
Listen, I'm a movie theater guy. I always recommend just going to the movie theaters. I don't know. I love going to the theaters. I think it's a good time. So I would say that Jeremy Allen White really good as Springsteen.
Because
So
if you go to the movies, you can get better popcorn. So
that's true. Yeah, that's the main reason.
Speaking of liberties, Scott with the butter machine. I'm the worst. I'm
I just
the
like
worst
stand there, yeah, just kind of spinning around. People are like, "Come on, dude! There's only the 2 of these." Like,
yeah, I let the butter dispenser go for probably an unhealthy amount of time for my popcorn. What's your
dripping through the bottom of the bag?
Oh yeah, it's bad. It's bad. What's your theater of choice, Scott? Do you go to the Showcase in Lowell? Is that your spot?
No, so I have no free advertising, but I have the AMC A list, so it's always an AMC theater for me.
Okay,
He's on the A list. Okay,
that's right.
You do Tingsboro or Burlington?
Either one. Tingsboro is the closest to me, but
nice.
Methuen quite a bit too because they have Dolby and IMAX in Methuen. And then sometimes, like if I'm around the Garden, either the one right there in Causeway now or Assembly Row, that's a good one.
No, what's A list? What's that like a What's A list?
So basically, I get to go to like as many movies as I want. It's like it's $25 a month, and you can see up to 4 movies a week. So if you just go twice a month, it pays for itself.
Oh, nice. So it's like a
robbing them blind over there. Do you also get a deal on popcorn or? No, that's the thing. It's like they know he's gonna spend that amount of money on the popcorn.
That they actually just let me go to the movies for free because they know I'm gonna buy so much popcorn.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. All right. Well, if you're a Springsteen fan out there and you haven't seen it, maybe you can find a theater near you this weekend and watch that. In the meantime, enjoy the Bruins as best you can. Enjoy the Bruins Avalanche game on Saturday. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.